Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Switching Grooves. I'm Russ Fritz, joined by
Nathan
Nathan
Johns.
Johns and Aaron Fry, owner of the Fast and Boss Sprint Car Series. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Aaron, I appreciate you taking your time out, man, to talk to us, and we really, really, really do appreciate it, and we're looking forward to this.
I appreciate you all having me on the show. See what happens.
So, before we get into a deep dive, like Jeremy would call it, how was your guys' Christmas? Pretty good.
Mine was real good. Yep, got to see the grandkids opening presents, and that's best blessing of all.
Oh, absolutely. I feel the same way when my kids are opening gifts, man. It's like everybody asks me, what do you want? Yeah, whatever you're gonna spend on me, spend on my kids. That's all I care about.
Definitely about the kid.
How about you, Nathan? Was yours good?
Mine was pretty good. We got to spend time with my family and my fiance's family. We had a good holiday.
Good. So, I guess you want to start off, Nathan. You want me to? Actually, let me start it off here. Sorry about that.
We'll have Aaron. I was gonna have Aaron tell us more about himself. Just
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Tell us a little about yourself and how you got into dirt racing.
I like a lot of us. My parents were going to the track when I was a kid. My early my life being dirt races, and I was one of the typical kids. Grew up telling everybody I was going to be a race car driver, and kindergarten class. I can specifically remember this is back in an era, late 70s, almost 1980, when still had a home and we had to tell the color of our name tag, the shape of it, our name, of course, and what we were going to be when we grew up. This was kindergarten, first day of kindergarten. I remember telling them I was going to be a race car driver. Well, there was other kids going to be president, astronauts, and whatever. Thinking, yeah, right, that's not going to happen, but I'm going to be a race car driver. I was fortunate enough. I started racing karts when I was 14 years old. Got in a sprint car for the first, I was 23 or 24 years old, and got to run 19 seasons, 3 seasons in 305. And I guess it had been 16 years in a 410. And it was kind of a dream come true for me because my family wasn't a racing family, they were spectators. So for me to cross that bridge, to the racing side, I didn't have a deep mechanical background. Still probably don't in a lot of ways compared to some. I didn't have um, the blessing of having a grandfather who raced, a dad who raced. Being born in a machine shop, everything I did, I had to learn from the ground up. And I can remember having my first sprint car and other drivers having to teach me things. Got my butt ripped for having an aluminum Heim in a rear arm in my 305 car. Another driver was walking by, happened to notice it. I didn't know. I mean, back then we couldn't get on the internet and just Google, how to put together a sprint car. If you were lucky, you had some old issues of Open Wheel magazine laying around, and you could read a little bit about it that way.
Oh man, one of the best magazines ever.
Absolutely, yeah. It was a lifelong dream just to be able to race. I never really intended to be in the position I am. I was winding down my career. My time was limited. And I started the Boss Series because I felt like there needed to be a stepping stone from local racing up to the USAC level. If you were a wingless racer, which I was half of my career, you ran local at Waynesfield or at Lawrenceburg every Saturday night. And if you wanted to do anything different, you had to pretty much step up to the USAC level.
Man.
The Boss Series, kind of took non-wing racing on tour around Ohio and surrounding states to kind of spread the word of how good non-wing racing was. And my wing buddies gave me a little bit of a hard time, like I had abandoned asked when I was ever going to do anything for the wing guys. So then we started doing Boss wing races in 2018, and then took over the Fast name, just name only. But went ahead and did what we had done with Boss, and that was take it out on the road and go to a lot of different racetracks.
So, what actually made you want to start the Boss Series, and how did you actually end up with Fast?
Well, I mean, like I just said, the Boss Series, it was more, I felt like the non wing guys needed something between weekly racing at one racetrack and going on the road with USAC. Guys had to learn how to run different racetracks or how to adapt to different racetracks rather than running the same place every week. I wanted to build basically a feeder series to USAC with Boss. The fast deal, like I said, my wing buddies were asking, when I was going to do anything for them, and we ran 3 races in 2018 with the Boss name, but wing events. We ran one at Atomic, one at Gas City, Indiana, and one at Montpelier, Indiana. All had great car counts. We were very close to the 30 car mark. If I remember right, I think we had 27, 29, and 30. I think we're at 3 car counts. Gio Selzy won a race. Brandon Wimmer won a race, and Cole Duncan won the other one that first season. Over that winter, Rich Farmer had called me up and he said, "Hey, I want to give you the Fast Series name." And I said, "Rich, I don't have the money to go buy anything. I don't feel like I need to buy anything." And he said, "No, no, no, you're not hearing me. I want to give you the Fast Series name." And he was stepping away from Fremont Speedway, stepping out of the industry at the time, and he didn't. He chose me, and I appreciate that. That tells you what good friends he and I were, and still are, as far as I'm concerned. I hope he feels the same way. But um, Rich gave me the Fast name, and it did. It solved an issue because we had a little bit of confusion when we'd announce a Boss race with wings at Gas City. Obviously, Boss and Gas City, everybody's thinking non-wing. So we needed
Yeah.
a name. I wasn't sure what to name it, and Rich gave us the Fast on Dirt name, which was a blessing and a curse both. A lot of people, animosity. A lot of people up in the Attica Fremont area looked at me as some kind of a villain, like I did something wrong. All I did was accept a name. One sponsor, one single sponsor stayed with us that came from the Fremont Attica Sprint. Most of it went to AFCS. That one sponsor was Rich Farmer himself. So, and
Wow.
the few people, there were some people out there who had an issue with either Rich or Fremont, whatever. I don't know. Let's put it this way: I inherited a lot more enemies than I did sponsors or sponsor dollars. And it took a few years for people to understand that it was me, it was my deal now, not Rich being a part of this. And so it took
Hmm.
years to overcome that, but I did exactly what Rich asked me to do. He said, "Take the Fast name, take it on the road, make a real traveling series out of it." He had run Fremont, and he had run a couple races, I think, over at Mansfield. I know the 305, Fast 305s went to Mercer at one time. I'm not sure if there were very many other fast shows at other racetracks or not. And since then, I think we've raced with Fast in Ohio and every surrounding state. And this year, I think we have 5 states, I think, on the schedule this
Now,
That's pretty
when
cool.
it came to fast, you strictly stuck with 410s and kind of cut the 305 deal out of that, right?
so far.
Okay. And just so people know that are watching, like, and it wasn't to be a jerk or anything. It was just
No, oh no, it's
you were based around 410 racing in the Boss, so you wanted to kind of stick with that.
yeah. Attica and Fremont have a pretty good lock on the open 305 deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, have we talked about doing something else? I mean, obviously now I'm aligned with Power Eye. Power Eye has their Wing 410 series, their War non-wing equivalent to Boss. They have a Race Saver 305 series, and the Ohio, Race Saver 305s probably could be bigger. We've talked about doing some other things, but right now that's still just in talking.
Nathan, you have anything?
I did have one question that came up during your during what you were explaining. My fiance wrote a couple questions. One of them she wants to know is there any tracks that are not on your schedule currently that you would like the Fast Series to run at some point in the future? Like any tracks that come to mind that you would like to run at just that aren't on there this year?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag here too much. There's several tracks we're still talking to. Before the show began, we were talking a bit, and there's the pressure to get our schedule out. I mean, we were getting raked over the coals about why we don't have a schedule out yet. For the world out there listening right now, I have never put a schedule out this early. We always did it on New Year's Day. Sometimes we'd even be a few days late getting them out. But this year we felt more pressure than ever. People blowing us up, whatever. There's still about 5 or 6 racetracks that are talking to us, asking about dates. I've got a couple of TBAs on our schedule because I'm pretty confident we're going to be able to fill those gaps. I think there are at least 4 tracks that I would like out of that group to get on there. I'm not going to go with those racetracks. I'm them kind of under wraps right now. As
That's
far
No,
understandable.
yeah.
new racetracks to get to. I was really hoping to get to Bloomington Speedway this year. Their schedule was pretty full when we first hooked up with them. Looking to the east, I don't want to go too far into Pennsylvania, but we have talked to places like Bedford, Clinton County. Path Valley is a neat little racetrack. They do it more with the Boss Series than
Yeah.
with and into Michigan, we run at Hartford, Butler, and I-96 before. That is some of the tracks we're trying to look at for the TBAs. There is a new racetrack. You guys are gonna get the scoop on something that I didn't
Ooh,
happening until about a week ago. There is a brand new racetrack being built in Kentucky,
really?
Really?
Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Going to be called 127 Speedway. You heard it
Oh, that's cool.
here first. It is at the junction of 120
Wow.
and the Bluegrass Parkway. 2 4-lane highways intersecting. Great location, not real far out of Ohio and Indiana. The gentleman building it owns the Tractor Pulling Association based there in Kentucky. They rent out the Louisville convention centers, things like that, and put on tractor pulls. He's been to Lucas Oil Speedway. He's seen the best of the best. He's trying to build a version of Lucas Oil Speedway right there in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. The track is done. Walls, lights. They sent me videos of late models. They were 602, 604, whatever, crate late models, hot lapping on the track. They are looking for bleachers right now. Yes, I think on the boss schedule this year, if that track turns out half as nice as what it appears it's going to be, I'll be taking the Fast Series to Kentucky next year to go to that new racetrack. It looks like it's going to be a fabulous place.
That's crazy. So you
That's
heard it here
interesting.
first, Switchy Groove fans. We now have a new track coming. That's awesome.
All people want to
That's
about is the
that's
races
cool.
that are close, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm a little bit of a racetrack historian. I'm not sure if you guys are even aware of that. I'm actually, hold on a second. It's kind of funny. I didn't plan on getting on this topic. This all these cards are racetrack listed throughout Ohio. There's about almost 500 of them now. And the
Wow.
thing is, I'm working on a book about Ohio's racing history with a buddy of mine,
That's
Kyle,
cool.
the Ohio Valley DTR. If you've seen Alan Brown's History of America's Ways, he tried to list every track in the country. When you do the whole country, you can't focus in on one state like what
No.
we have, but we've got about 100 racetracks that he missed here in Ohio alone. So
That's crazy.
his project was so big he couldn't possibly get them all. We're going to miss some in Ohio, but we found almost 100 that he missed. But anyway, my point of that is, you know, people always want to go on about racetracks. Oh, we've lost another racetrack. In the grand things, if you look, there's almost as many racetracks running right now as there has been at any other point in history in the state of Ohio. If there are race, there will be racetracks. The
I
problem
mean,
is you have more than 2 racetracks in one area because you've got Friday night and you've got Saturday night. Nobody hardly can race on Sundays and make it work. You can't run a weekday track more like you could in the 1950s. Now you've got Friday night, Saturday night. Perfect example: Wayne County Speedway, Lakeville Speedway, and Hilltop Speedway. One of them, for years, Lakeville and Wayne County were run because Hilltop reopens, Lakeville. Moeller Raceway, until Moeller and Brush Creek were built, Brown County had it all to themselves. Now you've got Friday night at Moeller. I'm not sure what Brush Creek's plans are this year, but you can only have 2 racetracks in one vicinity together. You got Lima on Friday night, Waynesfield on Saturday night. No other racetrack there in that area anymore. So you're going to have so many racetracks and keep them viable with enough spectator support and enough drive
abs-
to fill them. And for every racetrack we lose, it seems like we gain one.
that's 100% true. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself, to be honest with you. But I'm gonna tell you what, when that book comes out, I want to be one of the first ones to have an autographed copy of it.
I'd love to have a copy myself. That's so cool.
We were really hoping to get that book in print sometime this summer. We were using this winter to try to get through the rest of the tracks. We literally are going racetrack by racetrack. And what's funny is you'll research a place and some random newspaper article from 1939, it'll mention an event that happened at another track that is one we had never heard of. And that's how we just keep finding them. We've
So
uncovered
cool.
we've uncovered all kinds of, I mean, some really interesting information. Alan Brown's entries in his book would just list the track, approximate location, and then the years it ran, different names it went by, and that's about it. We go back, we find who actually built the place, what happened to it. It was dismantled. Where did the stuff go? We just found out just today the racetrack in Camden, Ohio, that went by about 4 different names in the 50s. The light and electric box, everything went to G&J Kartway, the paved go-kart track in Camden, Ohio now. Got a lot of equipment from a dirt track that ran from 52 to 57 in Camden, Ohio.
Wow. Well, speaking of that, like I love going and exploring abandoned racetracks, and I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but I don't think I've ever told you. But another friend of mine and we were down at McCutcheonville before they actually tore it down, and we were just going through the buildings, looking at stuff. You know, we weren't bothering anything, and nobody. They said, you know, as long as you're not hurting anything, and you know, you're fine. So we were looking around, and I ended up going in. I don't know if it was. I doubt it was the press box but it was below the press box. I don't know if it was storage or whatnot, but it was just full of crap laying on the floors and boards and everything. So I'm going through. I'm not finding anything good, and I pick up a piece of plywood, and there's the light switch from the flag stand. It was a removable light switch. It was just a piece of wood that had 3 different light switches on it. And it had a 4-way so it could go out, and then it had 110 coming into it. And I actually copied that when I made the light switch for the go-kart track I was running in Attica and Martinville. So, and I actually have that light switch to this day.
That's
and
so cool.
I thought about actually donating it to what's his name, Randy at the Hall of Fame here at Fremont, to put on display. And I just haven't gotten around to getting with him on that. But I thought that was pretty cool. I took it apart. I cleaned it all up. You know, I didn't redo anything. I just cleaned it up from the state that it was in, and I left it as it was after that because there was a lot of like dirt and crap all over it. So
I stopped there a few times myself. Actually took a car out on the track and made a lap with a buddy of mine, and a little bit of a mistake. It was pretty rough. We made a lap, but the guy has the campground behind there. I think he ended up being the one who bought it.
yeah.
He was kind of maintaining the property. The owner lived, I think, in New York and had passed away, was tied up in probate court. He took us on a little tour, kind of the same thing, as long as you didn't bother nothing or tear anything up. But one of the buildings and the old McCutcheonville Speedway signs were in there. One of them's hanging in my shop, my race shop. The other one is hanging in my game room. I have the McCutcheonville Speedway.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Unfortunately, I didn't have enough room to take a sign, but I did see those. Those were cool.
Yeah.
And I might have to come down to your shop and when you're not there. And no, I'm just kidding. I would never do that. I would never do that. But
I've got a nice little collection of antique race cars now. That's my other passion besides doing the history work. It goes hand in hand, obviously, to have the car.
Oh yeah.
It's neat to actually find the cars that I've got, to find them in these results. I've got a old Roadster car. It was driven by a guy named Paul Hooper out of Marion, Ohio. And man, that guy got around. He won a lot of races. And I've got a little midget and driven by Gene Comstock, and we find him in the opening day races at some of these racetracks. You know, not only was there, but won. So makes that little car, makes it even more special to me when we find the real history of, you know, it racing and winning races.
And when I was working at a local shop here, a year or so ago, we did powder coating and blasting and stuff. And Randy Mapus brought us this car to blast and powder coat for him. And it was, I don't even remember, but Mark Keegan drove it in the 80s. And Mark actually would, because Mark was right down the street from in his shop, and he would bring us stuff to powder coat that he couldn't fit in his oven and stuff like that. So he came in while we had that car, and he goes, I drove that car. I won with that car. It was just, it's cool to have those guys all in one area, and they're coming in the shop at the same time, and you're working on something, and they can tell you a little history about it. I love when that happens.
We have a sprint car that we bought it from Tom Berkey. Tom, the car owner of Ricky, well, not Ricky Lee, he sponsors Ricky Lewis, my boss champion, and helped Brandon Spithaler. 2 years in a row, Tom has been one of the primary backers on my 2 championship cars, who both repeated this year. But I bought it off Tom, and Tom had got it out of a collection down near the Cincinnati, Ohio area back in the 80s, I believe it was, when he had accumulated this massive collection of race cars that just most of them sat outside, and the neighbors were complaining that it was a junkyard. They were just, he literally had about 100 open wheel race cars, a few stock cars, but mostly open wheel race cars. And I went back in old issues of Open Wheel magazine. They had done an article on the guy in the 80s. I would have been like in junior high school at this time. There's this sprint car sitting in that collection. Tom Berkey went and bought it off of him in the late 80s, early 90s. Tom's had it for many years. We just got it and got to work on it, and we've already uncovered that the car was raced out of Aurora, Indiana, was probably a Lawrenceburg regular race car, but we're struggling to put together exactly who drove it.
Man,
Out who the car owner was, and the car was kept at a Don Sinclair station. Gosh, I wish I was ready for this. I didn't expect to get on this subject.
no, I didn't either.
This is like really exciting for me, this part alone.
He had a Sinclair gas station, and they kept the sprint car there. He had a half brother named Jim, and everybody referred to him as Whiskey Jim. That's what we still hear him called all the time. Well, he wasn't an alcoholic. That's what my first thought was. The Seagram's plant next door to Lawrenceburg Speedway. If you've been to Lawrenceburg, you can smell the whatever it is that comes off of that plant where they're making the alcohol, the distillery. But he was a manager of the Seagram's distillery. So that's how he got the name Whiskey Jim. We know when
Okay.
Cool.
built and maintained the car, they kept it at Don Sinclair Station there in Aurora, Indiana. But unfortunately, those guys are gone now, and it's tough for us to piece together exactly who the driver was. We just lost Butch Wilkerson. Butch just passed away here recently. I talked to Butch on the phone about it, sent him some pictures. He said, I remember the car. He said, I think it had just a variety of different drivers. I hate to say maybe it was the penalty box at the time, whoever did that, whatever. But I'll tell you this, it is a very heavy car. I think it was built early 50s, may have even began life as more of a stock car because, old sprint cars, they just took stock frame rails, and narrowed them
Yeah.
down. And so it probably began life as a stock car, converted to a sprint car, definitely had fuel injection at one point. When we got it, there was no intake or injection on it, but the holes were in the hood, for the injection. It's got a Corvette motor in it, which is really cool.
Ooh.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so we're going to try to have that one running here soon, but we're going to be looking for help on that one.
I have
So-
a historian question for you before I forget.
Sure.
I know that there was a few tracks that have shut down in our area, and I'm out of Pennsylvania, so there's quite a few of them that have shut down around here. Do you have any historical knowledge of Blanket Hill?
Blanket Hill, my goodness, it raced fairly recently, didn't it? Up into like the 90s?
They reopened recently, but I just didn't know if you knew anything of the old school back before it closed down Blanket Hill. This is just a for me kind of knowledge thing because I'm actually enjoying the historian part more than I think I was going to. So this is kind of cool for me hearing all these historical stories and fun facts.
You guys will have to make the trip down sometime. I have literally a library.
Oh man.
Mid-American Auto Racing News. It was printed, started in 1971. It ended in 2010, and I'm missing a few random issues. Mostly those Christmas issues and the November issue didn't really have much in them anyway.
Yeah.
I've got the Speed Age magazine, which was a big deal. I think it started printing in 1946. I've got just about every issue of Speed Age, all the early issues from Volume 1 up, all the open wheel magazines. I've literally got a library here. So if you need to research National Speed Sport News, someone back in the 60s bound every copy, every issue of hardback books. Um,
Wow.
Back into the 50s. Before that, there was Illustrated Speedway News. There was a newspaper called The Charger. I think I've got every issue of The Charger. It was great in the 60s, The Charger, because it covered Ohio and Indiana pretty heavily and had a lot more photographs. And National Speed Sport News wouldn't put a lot of photos in with their articles.
No.
Charger, I mean, we're talking, 8th page pictures. I mean, which is a large, I mean, like 5 by size photo.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose him?
Sorry, I was getting. I did.
Looks like his phone got
Yeah,
idle there.
I was getting a call there. I told people, family, that I'd be busy here this evening with my phone. But anyway, yeah, I've got a library. But I got to tell you the truth, guys. I have focused so heavily. I mean, we all know a lot of the big tracks like Ascot Park or things like that through the years. But my historical knowledge, because I mean, we're all limited on how much time we're going to be here. I have literally spent 25 years now
Wow.
focused, zoned in on Ohio. We have been that list of almost 500 racetracks I showed you a minute ago. Kyle Jones and myself have probably been to half of those ourselves in person to tour the property. And we just got permission today to tour the Camden Raceway property, which, like I said, went by several other names. Probably nothing left to see there, but it's still neat to go onto the property and be there where it took place. Sometimes we find old bleacher frames rotting away in the woods. I've got a pile of souvenirs here around my shop and my game room, things we found at racetracks, old lineup boards. I mean, just it's kind of a neat little hobby just to have different items. We've even gone and found racetracks that never ran a race. There's about 6 racetracks in Ohio that were built and never
Never
had
ran.
a lap turned on them.
Wow.
Kind of like the Eldora Mile.
stuff.
Well, that's one. And for the record, I talked to Earl Baldus myself. I ran in the Mopar Million, my first time ever with a 410 engine. Don't ask how that happened, but I was in the Mopar Million, and we spent some time with Earl in the days leading up to that. And I told him we'd gone over and walked the mile, and he told us the story on that track was never finished. I said, I heard such and such turned a lap, and it was too fast. And the same story everybody else tells.
Yeah.
But absolutely not. So the only one that turned a lap on it was me with I think he said a grader, it might have said tractor. I don't know. All I know is we missed a golden opportunity. Our phones didn't take video in 2003, not the way they do now. We didn't have a video camera with us. I missed a golden opportunity. We literally walked the mile with Earl Baldus. There's that, what is it, the Green Mile or whatever, the movie. We
Yeah.
walked the real mile with Earl Baldus, and a fantastic day. It had been September of 03. And I really wish I had that on video. We got a few pictures from the day, but that's about it.
Yeah. I've been on top of it at the corner there by the road, but I didn't want to invade on somebody's property, so we just went up there, took some pictures and stuff. But I mean, I would love to walk it. It'd be cool to see, but
I think when we were on it in 03, I'm pretty sure Earl still owned it then. He still owned all that property at the time. I think some of it's been sold off now. But my son-in-law, I hope he gets to hear this, but there was a racetrack in Cincinnati that was built in the 60s, and it made National Speed Sport News. It was on the 1960, I can't remember, 65 or 66. USAC had it on their sprint car schedule, had it on the USAC midget schedule, maybe even the USAC stock cars. It was called Alpine Resort Raceway in Morrow, Ohio. It was a ski resort. They're close to where Kings Island is today. And they built a half-mile racetrack. And we knew because the ad said, come watch movies in the ski lodge and check out our new half-mile racetrack. So I told my buddies, this thing was built. It's sitting in there somewhere. Let's go see if we can find it. My son-in-law decided in August on the spur of the moment while we're in shorts that we're going to go find this racetrack. And we walked, if you can imagine, some of the thickest brush in August. I mean, looking back, I'm surprised that our legs were cut up He had scars on him that last over a year, where his legs were all cut up from this. We got so deep in the woods, I literally took my hat and hung in a tree at one point, found an old oil bottle that probably was 50 years old, hung it on a tree branch. What I was doing, I was marking our trail
Yeah.
back like
So you get back, yeah.
I mean, that's how deep in the woods we were. But we knew
Wow.
where a water tower was, and we knew where a pond was. We knew the racetrack was next to the pond, probably what they were going to water it with. And we got back in there. We finally find this thing, and we see it from the backside, the outside of the banking. And if those of you that remember the 1975 version of the King Kong movie, when they crest the top of that hill, and there's this giant wall that held King Kong back. They didn't know it, of course, at the time. This giant wall in front of them. That's what it felt like. We finally
Wow.
go around the pond, turn and look. The banking of this thing was incredible. We knew what it was immediately, but we're in thick. I mean, the forest was so thick at this point until we climbed the top and looked down at the racetrack, and you could tell that was all cleared in the 1960s and 70s. It wasn't nearly to walk. We were able to walk around it. You could have passed football back and forth in that area because it was still so clear. Sadly, I'm glad we did it when we did it, because today all that's been leveled and they're building brand new $250,000 homes in that all through that.
Oh, man.
So,
Developers that have ruined everything.
yep, we got there just in time to see it firsthand, and we haven't met more than 2 or 3 people in the last 10 years. We've told that story that even had heard of the place. But I've got the newspaper ads, I've got the stories in National Speed Sport News. Circleville, Ohio had a little racetrack called Pickaway Speedway. I loved how easy scheduling was back in those days. This guy had a half-mile dirt track, announced he was going to build a 1-mile paved track, and the IndyCar circuit, which was probably wasn't AAA, I think it was USAC at that point, gave them a date. That racetrack was never built, never even begun, and somehow wound up on like the 19 whatever 60 whatever it was USAC IndyCar schedule for about a month, and then of course was taken off afterwards. So if that's the case, I could just throw all kinds of racetracks on my
Yeah.
here. The new Chillicothe racetrack we're building over here. It's not built yet, but hey, put it on the schedule.
That's so cool, though.
Things were a lot more haphazard back then, though, when it came to scheduling. That's for sure.
I think the new Chillicothe would have a huge competitor with Atomic there.
Ironically, I'm wearing a Chillicothe Speedway shirt from the original Chillicothe Speedway, which was actually right across the road from my shop here.
Really? That's cool.
Was built right after Atomic was built. They ran together for a couple of years, and then, of course, it didn't make it. Atomic was in a better location and better racetrack.
The last time I was at Atomic, it was still called KC.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
See, now
but I never got to see I never got to see a race.
Eventually, I gotta have him come to Lernerville because this will be so cool.
I got to see I got to see the track, but I never got to see a race at Atomic yet. So
it's a mini Eldora. It's a momentum racetrack. The fast cars are running up on the fence, and it's like I said, to me, it's just a scaled down version of Eldora.
My dad said it was what was it? They would come around the opposite end of the pit area, cut through the infield, and then hop up in the pit. So that's how banked it was.
I hate it. They changed the way we exit that racetrack now. That was some of the mystique of, especially taking a new person down to Atomic to watch the cars during engine heat come in off the racetrack. Every car came in front wheels in the sky. Some guys would get all 4 wheels off the ground coming off the racetrack. It definitely was something you had to learn how to do and do right. And I remember my first time, I was nervous as could be. I remember getting far down in the inside. See, they put a guardrail down the front straightaway. We couldn't go through the infield anymore. So we had to get as far to the inside as we could before we turned up the banking, come off the racetrack.
Yeah, and make a right-hand turn in a car that's made to turn left.
Well, not only that, but if they watered the racetrack properly, that water rolled down to the bottom of the racetrack. So we'd get the left side wheels down there in some mud, and then you're trying to turn right, in a car with 15 inches of stagger with a wing and hot laps, and you're trying to go up the banking to the right. It was a little bit tough. I mean, there was a few times I think over the years that hit the end of the guardrail there, but once you had done it a few times, it wasn't that bad. but I hated
so
Oh
you know,
crazy.
man.
yeah, it was part of the show watching guys come in off the racetrack. You could tell the rookies because they would be all four wheels, off the ground, launching into the field.
Sailing.
Yeah.
So some okay. Oh, I thought my mic fell off here, but it's still there. Sorry about that. So moving on. Um, like I said, yeah, I don't want to, sit here and pound you on all the previous stuff we've been pounding. I just want to touch on a little bit, but the 2024 Speed Week. Now, how did that come to be under you? Were you approached by High Limit, or did you approach them, or were you just going to do it anyway, or how did that happen?
No, I don't remember where I was when I got the first phone call about it, but we didn't go chasing it. We weren't trying to get it. Um, I was very humbled that they called me and asked me if I wanted it, because I found out later that at least three other individuals and or series had contacted them wanting to run it. I didn't call anybody. I didn't do anything. I like to tell people I was like the Heinz 57 commercial. If you remember years ago, good things come to those who wait. That was their motto, and that's I mean, we weren't chasing anything or wanting anything, but Kendra Jacobs, yeah, Kyle Larson had raced in my series a couple of times, won a couple of races with me. Um, he knew what we do. Brad, I don't think, was real familiar with Fast and Boss, but Kendra Jacobs, obviously Trey and Lee race with me, quite often. She told those guys, "Hey, you need to talk to Aaron Fry with the Fast Series. He covers Ohio, predominantly anyway." So yeah, we got the phone call, asked if we'd be interested, and of course we're going to be interested. Why not?
Oh yeah.
And, but the we didn't have any backing from them. I mean, not this isn't a bash at them at all, but they said,
No.
"Here's your opportunity to run Ohio Sprint Speed Week. Good luck with that." And then they went on and did their thing, and we were doubted from the very beginning. And I remember the predictions out there. People saying we'd be lucky if we had 20 some cars a night, and it'll never work. Whatever. I don't know, but we had no title sponsor. We had our heat race sponsors that we had all year long. We had a little bit of help from Victory Fuel and Tub of Towels. That was it. We didn't have hardly any backing. And we pulled off for the first time ever 9 races in 9 nights, 9 different racetracks. I don't think that had ever been done before. May never be done again. We got lucky that we were able to get them all in. The weather, I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better weather system. The days weren't real hot. It was great weather the whole week. We rained out the feature at Fremont, and of course made it up, there at the end of the season. But I got to tell you the truth. Those people out there, some of them listening, probably were some of these people that doubted us. I myself had my own doubts as to how well. I mean, I was nervous. Come on, it's your first time at bat in the big leagues. Let's put it that way. But I got to tell you this: the longer it went, the better myself and my staff got at executing. It's no different than a race driver. When a racer runs 10 races a year, he's not going to be his best. But when he runs 10 races in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, the more you race, the better you get. That was the same for us as my staff. The longer Speed Week went, the better we executed, with the exception of Millstream, and that was because of dealing with 2 racetracks. The midgets wanted to run on the little track. We weren't. That wasn't the plan for that night. So that race ran past 11 p.m. I believe every victory lane was done by 10 p.m. Most of them well before 10 p.m. Most of them with a second support class. The tracks even doubted me, even though they took a race. They all wanted to run a second support division as a extra way to pad the back gate, just in case I only brought 25 sprint. But I knew we were in pretty good shape when first night out of the box we had 53. Second night I think was 55. Then went to 47 at Waynesfield. I forget. We wound up with 33 at Atomic at the end, but not day 9. I mean, we had 3 teams that were there watching the races that were out of motors or out of cars. Or you get to the end of 9 days, of course the car count's going to drop, a little bit because people are out of equipment. But it went better than even I thought it would go. So I felt like we executed well. Did the money need to come up? Yes, it did. Did we need to tech more? Yes, we did. We had that in the plan for this year, and I was kind of blindsided whenever they let me know. Well, they basically offered me a job working for the new team. Let's put it that way. And I
Yeah, that
was
was like the second part of my question. There was like, you know, and well, before I get onto that though, I want to actually commend you on the Speed Week. I'm going to tell you, I made it to 5 of them, and I wanted to go to tracks that I don't normally go to. I made it to Muskingum. It was my first time there, and I'll tell you what, that was one hell of a show. And you did a great job, especially with the amount of time they gave you to put Speed Week together. You know, in 9 nights, nobody had ever done that without a break. I'm not sure what made you do that, but hey, more power to you, man. You did a hell of a job with it, and I just want to thank you for keeping that tradition alive for all of us here.
thank you for attending the races you did. I was glad to do it. Maybe I'm a little bit of a glutton for punishment. Our plan this year, late model has that Hell Tour. I know some people out there are upset that we're scheduled on top of the very end of this year's Ohio Sprint Speed Week, but we had planned to do Speed Week the same week we did a year ago, which would back it up 1 week from what's scheduled this year. I had already committed to doing, we were trying to revive the old school Indiana Sprint Week, which began with wings in the 1980s. In the 80s, most Indiana tracks were weekly wing racetracks. They went to non wing racing through the years. That kind of inherited the Indiana Sprint Week. So we were going to do an old school. We were going to run 9 nights, June 6th through 14th, I think it was, this year. And then we were going to take 4 days off and then come back with a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday Indiana Sprint Week. Basically, we were going to be trying to bring up a hell tour. If the late models can run 28 races in 30 days, sprint cars, hey, we're as good as they are. We can do it. So I scheduled Indiana Sprint Week and already signed some contracts, and then find out that not only are we getting Speed Week taken out from under us, it's getting backed up a week on top of my. So that was a little bit of a cluster we're trying to work around. I mean, obviously we're months away from that. Things could change. I don't know, but right now we're set to run Lincoln Park Speedway, Putnamville, on Friday night, Paragon, Indiana, Saturday night, and Terre Haute, the action track, on Sunday. So we've teamed up with PowerEye. That really came out of a necessity to get my drivers good insurance. That's part of the move, reason for the PowerEye move. In fact, that was the key. In fact, it brings us a new streaming partner too.
I will let Nathan take over for a few minutes. I need to take a quick break, but Nathan will take over for a few minutes, and I'll be right back with
questions. I had some people send me some questions. One of them was, do you have I know how drivers, they have a pre-race ritual for getting ready for the races. Do you have a pre-race ritual when it comes to preparing for the race day for tracks to promote the races?
Oh yeah, we typically put out a pre-race post. I send it to about 25 different news outlets or press writers, that kind of thing. But I would try to do that a couple of days leading up to the race. But as far as a pre-race ritual, especially on race day, I can tell you this: we leave plenty early. We get to the racetrack 2-3 hours before pit gates even open, just to make sure you can't be the guy putting on the show and not show up at the show.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, got to drive a almost brand. Just bought a new truck there 2 seasons ago, but you got to have a new truck and make sure the spare tire for the trailer's aired up and ready to go, and spare wheel bearings, and spare for the truck. And we always try to stop and get a good meal along the way, because I'll tell you this: once we get to the racetrack and we start setting up the souvenir trailer, then shortly after that pit gates open, it'll be
It
midnight
just
before
keeps
I
it
get
just
a
boom, boom,
like,
boom. Yeah.
yeah, I get to midnight for you. So we try to stop. It might be 10:30, 11 a.m. We try to get lunch food to make you feel more like you're up and ready to go for the day. But we try to hit a nice restaurant, usually within an hour of the racetrack, to get a good meal. And then I literally have some people around me who will come to me and say, "Here, you need to eat something." I found out about 2 years ago that I'm a borderline diabetic, maybe full diabetic. I don't know. So you got to eat every so often. You get blood sugar issues. So I literally, my mother, bless her heart, she the girls that work for me, she'll text them or call them and say, "Hey, remember to make sure Aaron gets a hot dog at some point, or something at the racetrack." So mom keeps an eye on me. I'm 50 years old, and my mom still makes sure she keeps an eye on me.
I like that. That's kind of cool. It's personal and it's cool to hear those fun stories. Do you have a favorite track that you're going to this season? Like one that you're really looking forward to going to? That because of the racing so good, or are they all just that good? Do you have one that really stands out in your eyes?
Yeah, I'll tell you that it's not so much um, the action on the racetrack. It's got good racing, but it's making a comeback. That makes it a little bit special. Knox Raceway over there in Pennsylvania.
I know exactly where it is.
Great track. If anybody uh, been around sprint car racing very long, they'll remember Brian. He was in an accident, unfortunately, that has left him in a wheelchair. But he is the most genuinely nice guy. He still loves racing. Comes to the drivers' meeting to thank everybody personally for being there. He's been in most of our drivers' meetings. We didn't get to run Knox last year. The track was shuttered for a year. We're going to run 3 410 shows there this year. Maybe one other special event later in the year. That out too. But it is such a picturesque, rolling hills all around it. There are very few neighbors. It's got a grass hillside. There's no way, like, for a kid to fall through the bleachers. They are literally bench seats built into the hillside. Little kids are like rolling down the hill, getting grass stains all over. I'm sure the moms really love that. But it's a neat place to take a family. You can let your kid run around and, get a little crazy and not worry about them falling out of the bleachers. It's just a neat venue, kind of a throwback to old style stuff, but it's just a very picturesque, very scenic area and neat racetrack. When that thing's prepared right, it's one of the best racing tracks in the area. But all the tracks, it's great to see Millstream back up and running. Cogley's fantastic people. Atomic will always be special to me because it was my home track for many years. It's where I first fell in love with sprint car racing. But Mercer was fantastic last year. We had great shows at Mercer, Tri City. I got to say this, I'm very excited to see the effort going back into racetracks the way I'm seeing from so many racetracks. Pittsburgh is putting a new wall around the
I
racetrack.
did see that. I'm actually just north of that a little bit.
A little bit of racing knowledge, history, trivia for you here. That is the same wall from Heidelberg Speedway. All the
Really?
walls around that place all came from Heidelberg. The main bleachers, which getting a little rough now, but they're originally from Heidelberg Speedway as well, the old Pittsburgh venue there that was so iconic. But they are putting a new wall around Pittsburgh. Tri City just resurfaced their racetrack. I think I counted the other day 6 or 7 racetracks that have put fresh clay down. Paragon Speedway over in Indiana. If you haven't been to Paragon Speedway for a while, a lot of the Wing fans probably haven't been there since the All Star heyday of the 80s or 90s. Paragon got pretty run down there for a few years. The guys that have that place now, absolutely fantastic to work with. It's the Heltons. Corey Helton there in the office. He's always got, our payout waiting for us, ready to go. Always happy, smiling. His dad's the one that actually owns the racetrack. Those guys, that Paragon right now might be the best run racetrack in Indiana. And I hope I'm not offending anybody there. I mean, I'm just saying the effort, the excitement. It's nice to see people reinvesting back into their racetrack, not just trying to milk the last few dollars out of it before they move on.
Speaking of Indiana, I'll actually be in Indiana tomorrow for the weekend. I'm actually going to Peru. It's actually just north of Kokomo there.
Oh, okay, I was going to guess the Rumble in Fort Wayne, which is this weekend.
We have somebody else going to that.
To be honest with you, I was in go-karts for so long, and I've gotten tired of the drama and the BS involved in it. I'd rather just focus on my show here and try to grow that.
See, I feel like I've met Aaron before because Mercer, they call it Michael's Mercer now, but that's only like 30 minutes south of me, so that's kind of cool. Hopefully, we'll get to see you sometime.
We ran there for years with the Boss Series. Boss always made a Mercer stop back starting in 2012, and up through about 2018. We ran there every year. Then we took a few years off from running there. I think the track may have been closed for a year or two.
I think it was closed for at least a year or two. Somebody bought it. They call it it was Mercer Raceway Park, and then it went to Michael's Mercer Raceway Park, and
Ed
that's what
Michael,
it's now.
Ed Michael owns it now. Yeah. Now Ed's father or grandfather, I can't remember which one, promoted that place back like in the 60s or 70s. So Ed is not just a brand new promoter come in and bought the place. He's got family ties going back
Yeah.
to Mercer Raceway for many years.
See,
Yeah,
that's
we're
super
Nice.
excited.
cool.
I don't want to leave Pittsburgh out. Our season opener is at Pittsburgh. Yeah, it sounds crazy. March the 15th. But hey, they shovel snow off racetracks at Lincoln to go racing in February.
Did you guys
But
try doing that last year? I think I do remember that.
and we couldn't have asked for a better day. I believe the high temperature was pushing 60 degrees. I think we hit mid 50s anyway. We made the mistake. We knew we wanted to do a day race. That we started a little too early in the day. It was the first daytime race at Pittsburgh since the early 80s. New owners, new promoter. We were new at it. And they're not going to make, she's not going to beat around the bush here. It got terribly dusty. It got so dusty that I contemplated, called drivers together. We debated on just canceling the race. It was that bad. But
Was
what we
that as
wanted to do is we stuck it out for the fans who came and the drivers who came. We reworked that racetrack as the sun went down, and it was phenomenal afterward. And we learned that we had to take time to make it right and learn. Now we know what to do for this year. The teams who came and didn't want to stay that long, I think there were 4 race teams who said, we don't want to be here another 4 or 5 hours waiting to get this show in. Um, I think all 4 of them had already qualified for the main event. We did run a B main that day. We had 30 cars. The 4 guys who elected to leave, I went to the promoter. I said, look, this is going to give us both a black eye if we don't take care of these guys. Those 4 guys who loaded up and left were paid start money as if they started that feature, and they loaded up and left. We took a couple more cars out of the B main that we ran, so some more guys got to start the feature. We ran a great feature, almost no dust. Ended up being a fantastic race. The feature ran right as we were having to flip the lights on. It was getting dark on us. It got a little cold by that time of the night, but we definitely, myself, the track promoter, the track owner, who there again, new people reinvesting in a facility. You can't ask for much more out of people. Everybody gets a mulligan, at least one do over. That's going to be ours on March 15, and we hope to present a much better show this time.
I remember hearing about that as a fan, and as dealing with Pittsburgh in the past, I knew that the racing had gone downhill, and I think it was this past season when you guys ran. I think that's what flipped the switch on Pittsburgh, is because for years it was known as not really that good. At least from my eyes, what I've heard, it wasn't that good, and all of a sudden, Pittsburgh has come back to life. And I was not expecting. I thought that track could be shut down, and I'm gonna guess it was because of you guys that track has gained new life, because it has been phenomenal since then. I've heard all kinds of crazy finishes. I mean, they brought the Pittsburgher to 2 days, and it was an electrifying finish, I heard. So I applaud you guys for getting that show in, because I think that's what started the turnaround of Pittsburgh not being as bad as it used to be, and it's gotten way better and way more exciting.
If you back up a little bit more to the fall of 2023, we lost Matt Miley, the promoter there, the owner promoter there for many years. He passed away months after I think it was a September of 2023 race. Matt had tried to get me to bring wing cars there for a couple of years, and I always shied away from it because so many drivers told me the place was too big and fast and hard on motors. We finally got Matt the fast show he wanted, and Matt had an oxygen bottle in the truck, couldn't even get out of the truck. I knew his time was limited, and I was so happy that after him asking for 3 or 4 years, I finally got him a wing show, and we had a heck of a car count. We ran a B main that year too. I think we had close to 30 cars at that one. And if you know anything about Pittsburgh's history with wing 410s, it wasn't uncommon to have a 10 or 12 car field for their unsanctioned shows. They would just run when they could, when there was no Mercer or no Sharon. And because guys were afraid of the place, I think I remember one night they had 8 cars. So 8, 10, 12. And then we show up with the Fast Series and took at least 27 or 28. It might have been 30, I forget. But Matt had tears in his eyes and was so happy he finally got the Fast Series there, and that made me get teary eyed. And I just had a feeling that I wouldn't see Matt again over that winter. Sadly, that's the bad thing about the off season of racing. Seems like every off season we lose a person or two, whether it be a crew member from a race team. We had that happen. Ran our last race of the year with the Fast Series, and we had a crew member from one of our teams pass away days later. And just sometimes you leave the racetrack for the last time for a race season, other than a banquet or the PRI show, you don't see these people again until the next race season. And sometimes some people don't make it, and that's the sad thing about it. I had a feeling that day that it might be the last time I got to put on a race with Matt Miley, and sure enough, it was. Still miss that guy.
Oh yeah.
I think that may have been the race that set the tone for Pittsburgh. And then, like I said, shortly after the track, it was the next summer. It was just earlier this season earlier that next season, 23, that it was sold. I think it was right in the middle of the summer, and we got to be the first race for the new promoters with a ball show there. So I think I'm off a year. I think that was the fall of 22 with Matt, and then the new owners bought it halfway through the 23 season. I think's the way it
I
was.
think that does sound about right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then 24. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was off a year there. It all runs together. I've been doing this racing.
Understandable.
Started go kart racing in '89, sprint car racing in '99, and started promoting in 2011. And there's been so many races, so many faces. Um, the good news is I think I still remember about all the guys that ever raced for me when they come up. Sometimes it's been 10 years, and somebody will show up at a racetrack as a spectator. Do you remember me? If they race with me, yeah, I remember them. It's tough to remember everybody, though. That's for sure.
Oh,
There's a lot of
absolutely.
racers you've brought up that I know also. I know Brandon pretty well. I've hung out with him. He used to have a go-kart track at his neighbor's house that they used to run. Jeremy, obviously, I met him through RC racing. But a lot of the guys that you've mentioned and that I know run your series, they've spoken pretty highly of your series. So it's definitely kind of cool the small world we live in.
The one comment, one of my, I got a couple of boss racers that are brothers, Jesse and Blake Vermillion, and they travel more than anybody. The boss series doesn't pay as well as the fast series does. There's just not the interest. There's not the support for it like there is for the wing racing anymore. But those guys put in more miles than anybody to follow my boss tour and race with me. And
I think they're both in fast, the ones that I know.
Oh, okay. These are boss. They said they've never had a promoter that they felt genuinely cared for them the way I do, and I do. My mother, when I raced, I didn't know this. My mother was taking Valium pills so she could sit in the bleachers and watch me race because it bothered her that much. My mom grew up in an era when every summer 3 or 4 sprint car drivers were killed. So when I started racing sprint cars, it bothered her that much, and I couldn't understand it. I was like, Mom, it's not a big deal. Just, don't think about it. Stay home. I don't know, whatever. And now, when you're on the other side, when you're in the tower and you're the one on receiver to these guys, and some of these kids are young enough to be my own kid, and I feel a responsibility for them. And so I'm kind of getting to see a little bit of why my mom stressed so much because I stress. I'm more stressed in the tower race directing than I ever was in the seat of a race car. Starting in the fifth row, which is the worst place to start. If there's a crash in front of you, you're in it. If you slow down to miss it, the guys behind you run into the back of you. Starting in the middle of a sprint car feature still wasn't as scary as what sitting in the tower is when you're looking out there and you see 20 guys coming to green that you feel responsible for. I feel like it's my
Absolutely.
out there getting ready to go green. And I say prayers every night that for a safe race and that everybody gets through it. I lost one of my drivers in a USAC crash. Justin Owen was killed down at Lawrenceburg last April, and that has almost haunted me. Justin was one of our regular boss guys for several years, and I mean, I wasn't even at the track. I was at Atomic Speedway trying to race direct a fast show the night that happened, and we got the news, and it was all I could do to get through my own race night. It was still a fog to me of what even went on at my own race that night because I was so out of character.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine. So to get back to where I was at, now, like I said, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I'm just curious on some of the other shows that you've done. They haven't actually asked the specific question. Now, yes, we know with the announcement that you actually put out that you were asked to dissolve fast for a position with the All Stars. Now, according to an interview with Rich Farmer and Jeremy Ellsworth, I saw that he had stated that he had offered you 50-50 ownership of the All Star deal. Now, is that the truth, or and who actually approached you to dissolve fast? Was it Rich? Was it High Limit? In particular, or how did that happen?
I got one phone call, and it was a group call. Brad Sweet, Kendra Jacobs, and Rich Farmer on the line with me. So it's a 4-way phone call. And the way it was worded, to be exact, I got in trouble because I used the word dissolve, and Brad never used that word. So I had to go back and get
Yeah,
exact.
I saw the Chaz's interview with you about that. That was funny about that whole dissolved word.
I'll get technical about it. I'll say it exactly the way it was said. Brad, we bought the All Star Series and rolled it into the High Limit Series. Now we're asking you to take the Fast Series and roll it to the new All Stars. And I don't know for sure what had already taken place, but I never got the pleasure of a one-on-one phone call with Brad. I was put on the spot with a 4-way phone call here with everybody listening and whatever, and was pretty well pressed to make a decision that they wanted me to hang up the Fast Series. How I don't know how dissolve it, blow it up, hang it up, hang it out to dry, whatever you want to use. The Fast Series. They said I could still keep the Fast Series name, but I mean, if I'm working for the All Stars, I can't. It's a conflict of interest. You can't.
Yeah.
You can say you can want me to keep the Fast Series all you want, keep it and hang it on the shelf for a year. We see what happens on the shelf for a year. It's hard to bring it back. They're finding that
And
out.
that
So
would have been just as bad as how if you would have kept Fast running on top of working with the All Stars, that would have been worse probably than what some people feel Brad Sweet racing in his own series is. I think that would have been a little worse.
So when to say I was offered 50% ownership, I don't know if you've ever been in business with anybody before. I have no partners. I own a building material supply company that I own myself. I own Boss. I own Fast. I've never had a partner, but I did. I do have a business degree from Ohio University. Did take a lot of business law classes. Somebody has to own 50.1%, or so be it, or it'll wind up real quickly in arbitration. With if things go south. I was specifically offered the race director position. Brad Sweet, I mean, I say specifically offered. It was hinted at. It was insinuated that would be my role in the new organization. But I mean, come on, to get 3 races down the road, there's a disagreement on how things should be run. I'm canned. Yeah, I'm out. So now what have I got to show for what all I've done for literally now really 14 seasons? Count my
Yeah,
start.
and then
I've done this for a long time, and I'm not. I didn't want to give it up.
you have obviously you wouldn't have a schedule for your Fast that year, so you'd have to hang that up for a year and try to do what they're doing and bring it back the next year.
You heard what I said. We all see now how difficult it is to put something on the shelf, try to bring it back a year later. It's not easy.
No. Well, I'm going to tell you, I actually commend you for standing your ground and sticking up for what you have built. I don't know what else to say. I mean, that just earns the utmost respect from me in anybody.
I
And
appreciate you. Makes me feel good. I do like to tell people though that I didn't buy any of this. There was no Boss series. I just grabbed a wisp of air and said, you know what? I'm going to start a Boss Sprint Car series. I was ridiculed in the beginning. People told me it would never work. I can remember, some of my first sponsors were people who literally said, "You're doing what I always wanted to do, but I never had the guts to do it." And that's what got me some of the sponsorships that wrote my first 2 sponsorship checks for the Boss series. And then the same thing with Fast. That's one advantage I've got. I haven't paid a dime for any of this. I didn't, like, my daddy didn't give it to me. I didn't inherit it. I didn't go buy it from something. I
It's
just
all
started it and
built.
got one. And so now I guess I'm playing with house money, so to speak, and I don't have to worry. I mean, I could fold it all up tomorrow and I'm not out anything, but obviously I'm not going to do that.
And so there's no bad blood with any of them for asking you that, or them towards you for deciding to keep going your own direction.
I sure hope not. I mean, I'd be more upset with them that they are mad at me if they don't respect the decision I made. I'm not mad about the way things turned out. I do think it could have been handled a little bit better. But um, the short notice that we got, I wish I had known, 2 or 3 months prior that they never intended to, let me run Speed Week again. I was calling repeatedly because I was working on putting Speed Week together. I had 9 races, 9 tracks. I was at the $1,000 at 10th, a magical number that everybody seemed to think that it needed to be at. I was getting things where it wanted to be. We were up in our tech game. We're doing that this year anyway. But we were doing exactly what everybody told us we needed to do to make it better. And then
Yeah.
almost November that we're not even going to have Speed Week. And if had I not been calling and aggravating them about getting it under contract, I don't know when I would have got the word. But it sure messed up my scheduling. I probably would have had 30 or 31 races plus 9 Speed Week. We'd have been at a 40 race schedule. And then whenever the All Stars get announced, some racetracks dropped me, went with them. Some events come back to me, and we got splitting. It messed everything up. And then everybody wants to know why we don't have a schedule out. Well, first of all, we have never put a schedule out before New Year's Day. And my schedule that I had worked on since October literally got a stick of dynamite stuck in it and blown apart. I had to rebuild a schedule. Plus, I'm trying to build a non-wing schedule too. So it's not easy. And
No.
It doesn't seem like it.
my favorite comment, not favorite, my favorite to make fun of, the comments I get every year, everybody, and they mean well. I mean, I'm not making fun of them individually, but just the fact that this happened, I'll get somebody who will message me and will say, have you ever thought about asking, and just insert racetrack here, Lima Land Speedway, Attica Raceway, about the bus schedule? It's almost like they're insinuating that I've never contacted these tracks to ask them. I can guarantee you one thing: there's not a racetrack within 6 hours of Columbus, Ohio, that if I felt it was worthy could hold a sprint car event. You can't go to a go kart track, obviously.
I mean, I've seen Boss at Attica and Fast or Fremont before.
Oh yeah,
So
Attica one time, 42 cars, drivers from 8 states and Canada, one yellow flag in 5 heats, 2 Bs, and a feature.
I
And
remember that.
back. They said we just didn't fit on their schedule. They got so much other stuff they do. But I do really miss the fact that we never got a encore performance at Attica as well as that first night went. But anyway, but people, if there's a racetrack within 6 hours of Columbus, Ohio, that is sprint car capable, safety wise for the fans, safety for the drivers, has to be taken into account. Has to be a big enough racetrack to race on. If there's a track like that within 6 hours, I have talked to them. There's either a reason we don't go there. There's either a reason they don't want us, a reason we don't want them, or it just doesn't work. There's probably 6 or 7 racetracks, like I said earlier, that we've tried to get this year that it just doesn't fit. We have 3 or 4 open weekends left, and they have 2 open weekends left, and they don't line up. It just can't happen this year. So we do our best though, and I want to race in every state that surrounds Ohio at least once. But right now we have nothing in West Virginia, and right now Kentucky is just for the ball series. We ran Florence, Kentucky last year with the Fast Series, had a great show, 29, 28 cars, something like that. Cole Duncan won. Danny Sams lowered the track record by about a half a second. That really um, but this year they moved their high limit date to the middle of the summer, and Florence said they don't want to run anything before the high limit race because they don't want to, get the crowd there too early. And then they felt like when you get into the fall, with high school football, school starts up in early August now, so you can make the high school football playoffs a couple weeks longer. When I was a kid, we started school on Labor Day, and now that there was 3 rounds of playoffs. Now that there's 6 rounds of playoffs, the kids start in second week of August going to school. But anyway, well, once school starts and football starts up, racetracks, they're hurting. That's something that I've noticed more and more lately. College football has become such a big market with Dr. Pepper and the Aflac Duck and all the marketing. They make fun of that in commercials about the marketing taking over college football. But it works. It's a real thing. We literally have to look at Ohio State's home schedule, and if they've got a big rivalry game, going to be an 8 o'clock kickoff. We almost can't race in the state of Ohio.
That's crazy.
Now, I did notice that too. Speaking of tracks that schedules didn't align or whatnot, I noticed that you're up here in my area, you are at Millstream a couple of times, but I don't see Attica or Fremont on the schedule for fast.
Yeah, unfortunately, like I said, I didn't make anybody pick teams or anything. I don't know. I hope the All Stars didn't make teams, but Attica. I mean, in September we kind of had to host the 2-day Spring Nationals and the 2-day Attica Ambush. I literally built a schedule around that promise, and sadly, I lost Montpelier Speedway, who wanted the April weekend for a fast show. By the time Attica gave me a no just a few weeks ago, because I mean this all just developed here in the last few weeks, truthfully, um, we fooled around and we lost our chance to run Montpelier, Indiana on April the 12th, and I had a 2-day offer from Tri City in Pennsylvania, August 29th and 30th, which was the weekend of the Attica Ambush. I had told both parties, no, I'm going to Attica. It's not in contract yet, but I've got agreement. When I find out we're not going to Attica now, I call those racetracks. Both of them already booked up, lost race. So I've learned to quit relying on promises from anybody. Really, it's kind of a cutthroat industry, and I learn every day as I go too. So
we should take the TBA on 517. We'll take it back over to Lernerville.
By all means, I will love to have you guys here. This would be awesome to see. I want to meet him in person just to say I got to do an interview with him.
We ran some Lernerville races over the last few years, but they've got their own streaming service now. Streaming, as much as what the race fans love it to be able to sit at home and watch races. I think High Limit hurt a little bit last year. How many races you saw where the bleachers looked like they were pretty empty? I was at a couple of them. I know for a fact some of them lost big money. Is the Flow streaming making up for it on the other end? They better hope so. But
I'm not a big fan of Dirt TV at Lernerville. I will tell you firsthand that I would rather be at the track in person than pay $30 a month to go watch it, at home. It costs more to watch it at home than it does to go to the track for a season.
We had the Cushion, who had been with us now for years, and we would go in. We would split with the track what we got from the Cushion. We had a contract amount for the first 4 years, and then the 5th year it became viewer based, and we split it. But Lernerville at the time was getting the contract amount, and we were splitting it, half for the series, half for the racetrack. But they didn't want to let us stream anymore, and there had been an issue with another event that had nothing to do with the Fast Series, but the Cushion had been there. Their shooter got into it with the Thompsons. What, I don't know, but we go in to do our event, and one of the Thompsons there that runs the racetrack comes over and virtually assaults my videographer. I mean, literally has him thrown off the property and got in my face. My drivers witnessed this. It was a boss event. My boss drivers witnessed it, saw this go down. I didn't even bother to try to call the place last year, and also same thing this off season. So 2 years in a row, I just didn't even bother trying. Whenever they get done with their streaming through their own little company, they didn't want the Cushion in there anymore. Now I'm on start to finish with POWRi, but stream is going to divide some racetracks. I'm shocked that the Dirt Vision tracks got the deal to do Speed Week. I don't know what strings were pulled there, how that worked. Supposedly there's rumor that, one's buying the other one out, and that kind of thing. I don't know, but somehow they put it all together. I went through a nightmare last year at PRI, ruined my PRI last year. I had help from a couple of the racetrack promoters trying to get Dirt Vision and Flow to come together. If you remember, we ended up doing 5 nights on Flow and 4 on Dirt Vision. Uh, I mean, tried to bridge that gap, and now somehow the new All Stars just come in and it's all in Flow, and everybody just bends over and lets them do whatever they want. I don't know how that happened. So much better for them
Yeah,
than for us, but that's really what happened. But streaming is going to divide some racetracks from some series, and it happened with us this year. Not only with Lernerville, but the little track there in Indiana, Circle City. I had to think of it for a minute. It's a new racetrack. Circle City Speedway has their own Circle City TV, and very difficult to work with. They don't want us doing our streaming. That's part of our revenue as well. At least we share our revenue with the racetrack. When the racetrack does their Lernerville TV or their Circle City TV, we don't see a dime of that. So,
use
so
that.
we just want racetracks. I
I
hate to,
know that Lernerville itself has its own streaming service, and they seem to do local events. Like they do the demo derbies at the fair near us. They broadcasted a concert earlier this year, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. A lot of the local events are now run by a streaming service that is owned by the track itself. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I really don't understand why we needed a streaming service. I mean, I know those people can't make it to the track, but at the same time, it costs more to buy the streaming service for a year than you buy a pit pass every single week at Lernerville. You could buy a pit pass and get access to the entire track for less than it would be for a year's worth of streaming through their specific streaming service. And I don't understand it because they don't really have anything good on it. They post the same stuff they do on their streaming service to the YouTube the very next week.
I do appreciate the streaming for the older folks who can't get out to the racetrack, especially
Yeah,
on
that one I understand.
But I'll give you a great example. Ricky Lewis is my 2024. He was also my 2023 Boss champion. He's a repeat champion with me. Ricky's from California, so his mother and his sister and the rest of his family get to tune in and watch pretty much every Boss race through the course of the season. The first comments on every broadcast or on every post, is Ricky's family, congratulating him. He won tremendous amount of races. I forget what his total was. I think he won 25 overall this year, around the country. But he won. Gosh, we only completed 11 races. I think he won about 6 or 7 of them, something like that, maybe more than that. But Ricky's family, obviously, they can't drive back and forth from California to watch him race in the summer. So
Yeah.
this is them a great opportunity. And like I said, older folks and stuff like that. Somebody's, you got a wedding you have to go to, and you're standing there. Maybe you're the best man in the wedding. You got that phone down there beside your pocket. Keep an eye on who's winning. I mean, I think that's one of those commercials where the best man's watch a football.
I feel like that one it was personal because that would have been something Russ would have been doing at my wedding. I'm not
Hey,
gonna
he's giving me ideas for while I'm standing up there as a groomsman at your wedding next year.
Feeling that was aimed at me.
Yeah, just got
If you
room off in the distance with the TV on that the rest of the people can't see, but the best man can see it back there.
Yeah, I feel like I had that one coming because I knew Russ. That'd be something Russ would do with the Saturday show. I now have to hide his phone.
But I will say this: the race fans, if they really think they're just going to be able to sit at home the rest of the time and just watch on TV as a routine thing, yeah, maybe you will be able to, but you'll see more and more tracks closing up because the racetracks need us there in person. There's something about being at the racetrack. I mean, the sights, the sounds, the smells of a racetrack. I mean,
oh yeah,
it's just the fuel smells, but also it creates an atmosphere. You go to an event and there's 200 people, you don't feel very excited because you're like, what am I doing here if nobody else came here? But if you get a crowd full of people, I mean, I got to go to some fantastic high school football game atmospheres. I'm originally from Ironton, Ohio. Finally, a state championship after losing our last 9 trips to the state championship game. We won our 3rd state championship this year. But the electric atmosphere of being in those crowds, the bigger the crowd, the more exciting. That goes So it'd be nice to get the fans out to the racetrack. The track promoters sure do need it. I mean, right now, Flow probably is making more money than maybe Dirt Vision, making more money than anybody in this industry, and they're just videoing it, sending it to people at
Oh
home.
yeah, I mean,
I can tell you this: I know firsthand the racetracks and the series are not getting the amount of money that it takes out of the bleachers. I mean, I grew up in this sport, been around it a long time, and the crowds I'm seeing now are far shy of what the crowds were just 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so if they're staying home and watching on TV, that's great, but the streamers are not getting very much back to the racetracks, not at least not in my experiences with it.
I mean, I tell you what, I remember the days when I was younger. I was a kid, and I would go with my dad on Wednesday night just to lay our blanket down and tape it to the bleachers, because you wanted your seat saved because it would just be packed all the time. And now it's just, man, I could walk in and find a seat anywhere just about anymore.
Yeah, that's it's a shame, but I think a lot of that has to.
But so speaking of, I know we touched on sponsorship a little bit there. The Power Eye sponsorship. Now, how did this come to be? Because I found it very interesting. This and along with Honest Abe, and I think it's a great thing for you, a huge opportunity. And I was just curious how that happened.
Well, the Honest Abe deal, Kevin Newton owns Honest Abe Roofing. Kevin raced with me quite a few times over the last few years. Every time we went to Indiana, he was in the field. Guy loves to race. He runs midgets, champ cars, wing, non-wing. Incredible how much this guy races. I don't know how he does the roofing business. He's almost full time. Anyway, great
I
blessing.
could have swore I saw them on the high limit or a couple of high limit shows last year.
Probably so, yeah. And he's a sponsor for USAC and now with us and Power Eye. He is a great asset. Does a great job helping everybody out. But I had approached him about, sponsoring the series. And then it was brought up that we had a driver that was injured at Atomic Speedway at our final race. And the racetrack insurance, like a lot of racetracks, there's $1 million policy for a car that goes in the crowd or something wild happens like that. But per incident, per driver, a lot of racetracks have a much lower policy. And in this case, I think it was $10,000 or $15,000. It wasn't going to cover all the bills. And so the driver that was hurt, we found out he didn't have enough insurance to cover it either. We're in a mess. So we did some fundraisers, tried to help round up some money, help this driver out. And I told Kevin, I've got to get some insurance for my drivers, that they can buy into. And he said, I've got just the guy you need to talk to. So he hooked me up with Kenny Brown, who owns Power Eye. So through Power Eye, their logo next to our Fast logo, they are sanctioning us for no money. I don't have to pay Power Eye a dime. It didn't raise the cost of my shows. The racetracks and the competitors, it's the same Fast Series it's been for the last 7 or 8 years. However, now the drivers have the opportunity for $100 to buy a Power Eye membership. They don't have to buy it, but they're going to check mark a box on their registration form that it was offered to them. I might even put on that box that they're going to spend $3,000 in expenses racing tonight, but they turned down $100 worth of insurance to protect myself, for liability. But, I'm going to sleep better at night knowing they all had the opportunity to buy this. And I've already had a couple of individuals, I would say sponsors, but they're not really businesses. These are individuals who are stepping up and going to pay my top 10 in points once we get it established who our 10 are, going to pay for their Power Eye membership themselves. So the guys running with
That's cool.
will be covered $1,000 worth of supplemental insurance. The Power Eye move for me was more about insurance than anything else.
And I'm gonna tell you what, that I love that you did that, man. Being safety has been a huge thing for me as a promoter and a track owner over the years. And I'm gonna tell you what, man, I cannot believe that somebody out there went after something like that. And dude, I'm gonna tell you what, Aaron, that gives me just such respect for you, man.
Sorry,
And I appreciate that.
no problem. I had another call there. I had to.
Yeah, we have gone a little longer than I thought we would, but so
It goes back to what I said though about I do genuinely care about my drivers. I and getting the insurance, like I said, it gives me a peace of mind, knowing that they have that opportunity. And the PowerEye thing, it also, to affiliate with them, they've got a lot of other organizations, 600 mini sprints, 600 non-wings. They've got a PowerEye Race Saver 305 deal, the War Series, the PowerEye 410s. So by linking up with them, they race over into Illinois, we race over into Indiana. So by linking together, they come from Texas up through Oklahoma, all the way through Illinois. Now we pick up in Indiana and stretch all the way into Western Pennsylvania. So by
And
linking
that's actually
arms,
pretty cool.
yeah, I mean, I tried to talk to Flo about, putting our races on streaming. I tried to talk to Dirt Vision. Couldn't even really get a conversation there. I don't feel like anybody has extended a hand in any direction to work with us. But when I talked to Kenny Brown and he was interested, like I said, it was mostly about insurance. But by linking arms now, I feel like we've linked up a big territory here. And it goes down to, the good old school dance. You got to dance with the one that, brought you, or dance with the one that'll dance with you. That's what we've done. We look for a dancing partner and we found one.
And speaking of that whole Dirt Vision one, I mean, that's kind of shitty that, I see Dirt Vision pretty much turning everybody down because World Racing Group just wants control of it all. But I wouldn't think that Flow would turn you down that quickly and easily, because I see all kinds of series on Flow. So along with all the other different sports that they have on Flow. So
I think
that's just crazy.
They were going more after individual racetracks there a few years back. And I think that's even dried up some. I think it wasn't as lucrative as what they first thought it would be. I'm just speculating here. I don't know for sure. But yeah, like I said, we just, the start to finish gets us a wider audience. Ian at the Cushion has been fantastic to us. We're trying to work a deal where we can keep them involved, maybe doing the production for start to finish. But we're trying to make it to where we get a wider audience. Start to finish obviously has subscribers all over the Midwest, all over from Texas all the way, like I said, through Oklahoma and Missouri. And
and to be able to bring that focus to your series and your races all across the country rather than just one area,
right.
That's going to help tremendously.
Yeah, get us in front of a wider audience. And the good thing about this too, and the tracks that are on our schedule this year have appreciated this. I asked them, I said, have you ever heard of Start to Finish? And I asked them to ask their race fans or their family members if they're a subscriber to Start to Finish. Most of them say they've never heard of it. So we aren't going to take fans out of the bleachers with Start to Finish the way, let's say Flo gave me a miraculous new contract and I'm getting to stick $1,000 a night in my pocket. Okay, that sounds great. Then we go to the bleachers, and there's half of the crowd in the bleachers as what there should be, because everybody stayed home to watch on Flow. Now with Start to Finish, yeah, I'm not getting a bunch of money. The series is getting some for the point fund, but it won't hurt the crowd. Hopefully, the crowd comes out to watch the races live and get the old dirt in the beer or whatever, or the way a live race is supposed to be watched.
If you don't get dirt in your nacho cheese at a racetrack, you ain't a true race fan, at least a true dirt fan.
Right.
I've eaten plenty of that.
I was at Attica one night and I had missed the feature. The feature was getting ready to push off, or had just, maybe it might have been green still. And I had gone and got a pizza, and some people were talking about dirt in their food or whatever. I come back and I opened my pizza box and let it catch some of the dirt.
And then you ate it.
Closed the
I
box.
love that.
Sat right down, started passing out pizza to everybody. Here you are. Now you got dirt in your pizza. So
That's great.
yeah. But as a driver, the other drivers out there will tell you, there's been many nights. Sometimes the drivers are the cleanest individuals of the night because of the vacuum of the wind.
Oh man,
I can remember getting out of a car at Atomic Speedway a few times and looking at my crew and being like, where have you guys been? Because they looked filthy. And I wasn't as dirty as they were, because it just doesn't get you in the race car the way it does when you're right beside the racetrack. And non-wing, the exact opposite. You get filthy more.
You should have seen some of the nights I would come home from Fremont Speedway as the flagman and take my glasses off, and I just got nothing but dirt except for where my glasses were.
I look like a raccoon. Robert works down to my turn 4 cone, and he'll come back up off the racetrack, and he'll look like a raccoon. Yeah, when he takes the goggles off. Yeah.
I love that. That's so funny.
So since we touched on all that, here's something I haven't heard anybody else ask you yet. So, how do you feel about the future of weekly racing? And do you think it'll change or become a thing of the past completely?
I think racetracks are going to have to adapt a little bit. Um, the old street stock class is a thing of the past because we just don't have the Detroit iron we once had to make old stock cars out of. So what's called sport modifieds have taken the place of the street stock class. I think some weekly racetracks may have to go down to a 305 race saver, or maybe even the open 305s. A lot of the late model tracks have gone to steel block or crate late models, some kind of a limited form of late model racing. I think 410 sprint car racing, super late model racing, that kind of stuff may 10 years from now be pretty well reserved for touring series. I hate to see it become that, but that seems to be the direction we're headed. I think the weekly tracks are going to hurt more. If you look at the All Star announcements for their first few drivers, at least two of those guys were pretty much regular Wayne County racers every Saturday. I've had two other Wayne County racers who have called me. Everybody asking about our driver roster. We don't require memberships. We're going to take the top 10 in points every night, and I think we'll have enough guys commit. I was counting them today. I think we have 16 race teams slash drivers. Some of them were just car owners who haven't named a driver who have called us, inquired about our new tow money package to find out, what it's going to entail. We're going to be fine on race cars, but two of those guys that have called me are county cars. So if the All Stars take two and I take two, there's four cars going from Wayne County Speedway this year. And they already had some nights last year where they only had, 14, 15, 16 cars. So I hate it that the All Star Fast thing, we coexisted for the first 5 years I had Fast. Then last year was the first year there was no All Stars. Now everybody's just all up in the air like it's just the end of the world that we can't go against each other. We did this together for 5 years. And I don't see where it's really going to be that big a deal. It's going to present more drivers, more opportunity to make more money. Is it going to hurt the weekly racetracks? Atomic Speedway already doesn't run a weekly 410 show anymore. He's only got about 8 races, I think, 10 races on his schedule for 410 sprint cars this year. So, Attica and Fremont have kind of been codependent on one another for so long. I hope Wayne County's not the one that suffers the most in this deal. Jason's been a good friend and a good supporter of my stuff, certainly not trying to hurt what he's doing, but it could get tough on weekly racetracks, that's for sure.
So, what have you actually changed this year? Speaking of the tow money package, what have you changed this year for each series, and what do you plan to change in the future?
In the Fast Series this year, I think our biggest change, even more important than the money, is they've asked us for years to do more tech inspection, start checking for tire doping and fuel and things like that. The last couple of years, all we've done is check to make sure they had the right compound tires on. We make them run the spec right rear Hoosier tires on right rear and left rear. And the other thing was checking wings, flat top wings, max 2-inch wicker bill. We were spot checking them through the night. I some nights had guys checking during qualifying, checking everything. Almost every single race, I was in victory lane. If you watch some of the videos from last year, you'll see me with my phone flashlight going around to the four tires of the top three cars, looking at wings, looking at the wicker bills. That's all we were checking was tires, wings, and wicker bills. Now we're going to be weighing cars after qualifying, top three after the feature, 1425 with driver, like everybody else's weight rule. Um, and we're going to be checking fuel, taking some tire samples to check for tire doping. Hooking up with Blue Ridge Labs through Hoosier to check our tires. I'm going to have a tech package. I hired a tech director. It's A.R. Gardner, former sprint car racer. He's going to be our tech director and be the one checking race cars every night, or every night that we can have him there anyway. I think he'll make every race. But as far as the other difference this year, we picked up the Honest Abe Roofing sponsorship, and we've always done a deal where our top 10 drivers were guaranteed an extra $100 on the night. They were guaranteed taking home a minimum $500. So if they ran 11th place, and that pays $480, I think it was. They were guaranteed taking home 500. If they ran 20th because they dropped out of the race, where we pay 400 to start, they were guaranteed 500. Same thing in the B main. Everybody else was guaranteed 100. The B main guys were guaranteed 200 that were top 10 in points if they ran the B. This year, with Honest Abe Roofing, we've taken $25,000, divided it by 25 races, 10 teams a night, an extra $100. In fact, we may even just give that out right at Pill Draw each night once we've established that top 10. But what we're going to do is we're not going to pay any of it the first two races. We're going to wait till race 3 and then make it retroactive. So if you're top 10 in points
Okay.
after night number 3, you'll get your extra $200 from race 1, your extra $200 from race 2, and your extra $200 that night. And if you bought the insurance, your $100 from the insurance you get back. So you could get an extra $700 on race number 3. That establishes our top 10. Because if I go out and invite 10 guys, I'm hurting feelings of guys number 11, 12, and 13 that they get an invite. I almost feel like
Exactly.
running an ad like a lawyer. If your feelings been hurt by not getting invited, come to the fast. But anyway, I just don't feel it's fair. If I took my first 10, I could already have 10 guys signed. But then you get 3 weeks before the season starts, and Steve Kinzer calls me and says, "Hey, I'm coming out of retirement and I want to run the fastest this year." Oh, I'm sorry, Steve Kinzer. I've already got my locked in 10. I don't have room for you. Sorry about that. You can't do that. So we're going to go based on performance. If you ever
I
saw
like that idea.
if you ever saw the movie Semi Pro, the Flint Tropics, they had to get
Yeah.
it should be based on performance. Making it to the NBA. Same thing with us. It's going to be based on performance. You want to be a top 10 fast point traveler? Come out for the first 3 races and prove it. And then we'll go from there. And you know what? There may only be 10 guys that even do it. So it's not like you got to come out and set the world on fire. It's Pittsburgh to Millstream to Atomic, the first 3 races. And I don't think anybody would just casually run those 3 racetracks. You have to make a concerted effort to go to those 3 events. And that should establish our top 10 right there.
That's a good point and a good plan. I actually like that. That's actually very good.
I've talked to multiple car owners, and they're the ones who really have the skin in the game. There's a lot of guys willing to sit in the seat and push the pedals and steer, but we're running out of the important people, the car owners, the guys willing to put the money it takes into this sport. Those are the guys I talked to about my plan to, make the money retroactive after the first 3 races are in. And they felt like that was a very fair way of doing it to make sure it goes to the right people.
So one thing I've always been curious about, and now I actually get a chance to ask you, have you ever actually thought about incorporating both of your series into one and having them both race on the same nights on the same schedule?
Oh, that's going to happen quite a bit this year. All 3 of our Millstream races. My phone's dying. It was fully charged. Tells you how long we've been doing this. The 3 Millstream events are Boss and Fast combined. 2 of the 3 Atomic races on the Fast schedule are Boss and Fast combined. Lincoln Park and Paragon in the Indiana Swing are both Fast and Boss. I think that's it so far.
Oh, that's cool.
It's going to happen
I
several.
like that.
We've done it before. We've done it in the past. We used to do it up at I-96 Speedway in Michigan, and we'd have 28 wing 410s and 32 non-wing cars, and it was fantastic shows. I'm hoping to get them. Butler and 996 are 2 of the tracks I'm still trying to put those deals together with. But we, I also, over the years, had thought about trying to get a sponsor to put up the money. I talked to Napa at one point about doing this. What I was thinking about doing was doing a highest combined points and letting drivers, you've got to run, your best 5 events of each that would count toward the championship. A guy could run, 10 wing races, but only his best 5 would count toward it, but he had to run 5 non-wing. So your best 10 races, 5 wing and 5 non-wing, and declare an overall Ironman champion.
That'd be cool.
A Jack Hewitt type championship, a guy that did both, which everybody loves to give Jack Hewitt credit for being the guy to do both wing and non-wing. Jack Hodenshield did it as well. Either way, Steve Kinzer. Most people don't realize how good Steve Kinzer was without a wing. There was a time, I think it was early 90s, when the CRA came to Eldora California Racing Association for some of the newer people out there. They would
Thank you.
come to the east here and run all over the Midwest and the East. And Steve Kinzer rained out somewhere, and he just casually drops into Eldora, unbolts wings, and goes out and whoops the best of the best in non racing. He hadn't raced without a wing in probably 7 or 8 years at that point, and just went out and spanked him. So
like
That's awesome.
like Jack Hewitt, one of the best.
yeah, Joe Jack was one of the best at it, but yeah, Jack just he gets the credit like he was the only one. There were a
Oh
lot.
no.
Frankie Kerr, Fremont, Ohio's native
Hmm.
son, was really good in non-wing. Byron Reed was really good without the wing.
Brian Smith.
Terry Shepard back in the day was good without the wing. Yeah, so I think it would be neat if we could bring some of that back. Racing has gotten so specialized. You have wing cars, non-wing cars, wing bird cages, non-wing bird cages. There was a time when we ran pavement with the same cars that we ran. That definitely isn't going to happen anymore.
But Nathan, do you have anything before? Because I know Aaron said his phone was dying. We don't want it to die on us in the
I
middle of
don't
it.
have really any other questions that will fit in the time range of his battery. I just want to comment that I absolutely love the artwork behind you on the wall, the old school photos with the 42.
Oh,
I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I just was that's because I know we were talking about the historic race tracks and all that, and I just want to comment and say that was the coolest looking photos I've seen. I just thought those were super cool.
that's Atomic Speedway with Jeff Gordon racing beside Kenny Jacobs.
See, now he's got my attention because I heard Jeff Gordon.
Yeah, Jeff ran here weekly at Atomic Speedway for a couple of years. There were only a few states in the country that would let him race a 410 car at age 14. And
I remember hearing about those. Yeah.
Ohio was one of them. He lived right here in Ross County for the summer, for a couple of summers. He'd get a run in Florida and then come here, and he could run, I think, Ohio and Indiana. And that was about it. Most other states wouldn't let him run.
Yeah, because that was part of the biography is he wasn't allowed to run in California, so he had to move to Indiana. So that I remember that part of it.
We were at Atomic Speedway, and I was a child. I was probably 11, 10, 11, 12 years old. And he was brand new. He might have still just been 13 at that point, but I'm thinking he was 14. He got into the wall in 1 and 2 and rolled the car in a heat race. Flip. It wasn't a violent flip, but it was enough that, could have shook somebody up pretty good. I had an uncle that went with us to the races that night. He laughed, said, that's the last you'll see of that kid. They go back in the pit area. Gordon comes out and runs away with the B main and wins it. Back then, you had to start about 17th once you won the B like that. He charged from 17th up to finish about 3rd or 4th place, and in the feature. And I remember on the way home, I said, "Yeah, I didn't scare that kid one bit." So,
I like it.
But my tech director, A.R. Gardner, I was just talking about, did a little bit of research on his career back in the day, and I should have got it for him Christmas present and blew it up, but it was the results from Lawrenceburg Speedway in a heat race. A.R. Gardner won the heat race, 2nd place, Jeff Gordon.
Oh
Now
wow!
that's
Of course,
cool.
hey, you Jeff Gordon down there at Lawrenceburg.
The 4-time champion. I like that. That'd be cool.
Back in the days when Lawrenceburg was a weekly wing racetrack. Paragon was a weekly wing racetrack. Lincoln Park, all of them once upon a time were weekly wing tracks, and they migrated to non-wing mostly for the cost back in the late 80s into the early 90s. And I know when I started racing Lawrenceburg weekly in 99, it was all non-wing and had been for a few years. But yeah, that's another little bit of trivia that most people don't know, most of the newer race fans. Indiana Sprint Week began with wings.
I like that. That's super
We're
cool.
definitely have to set up a trip down there with Aaron, and we can look at a lot of historical
We
stuff.
need
That'd
to
be
do
cool.
like a live tour with him of all his historical facts. This is way more intriguing than I thought it was going to be, so I'm glad I made this episode.
There's 2 antique race cars inside my house. I have a game room on the end of the house.
Oh, man, right in the house.
There's 2 antique race cars in the house, 2 midgets. I built a little stage that wasn't necessarily for those midgets, but anyway, stage out there with lights around it and stuff. But the midgets sit on the stage, and it's pretty neat little display. We sent a picture in during the Chili Bowl. I can't remember if it was last year or a year before, but they thought that was pretty cool. We had the Chili Bowl on the TV with 2 antique midgets, one from 1934 and the other one from sitting in the game room.
We need to
That's
schedule a
cool.
time to come visit him and do an interview live because this is awesome.
I may have that 1950 sprint car inside the game room next winter. We're going to try to get that. It's just kind of a pain in the butt draining the fuel out so they don't stink up the house and that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So
I love
before we let you go, any like major future plans, coming up for 2025 that we could look forward to, or are you just kind of content with where you're at and we're gonna roll with what we've got?
This year, I think I have to be content with where I'm at. We had some plans for a little bit more growth. Some of that got cut out from under us, and I mean, it is what it is. There was an all-star tour around for several years before. Had that not come back, I think we would have taken another step forward. We took a big step forward last year. Keep in mind, prior, we were paying 10,000 to win our point championship. We were paying our shows paid 3,000 to win, 300 to start. We went to 4,400. I took my shows from a $14,500 purse to basically a $20,000 purse, and to take that next step would probably have been possible, but now we have to maintain what we have. They're jumping out in front of us, the All Stars, with a 30 some $1,000 show, just a little over 30, I think it is. So we had to stay cost effective for the racetracks to make sure we booked our shows. And, we were told we'd be lucky to book 10 shows this year. Well, we've got 23 already in contract. I've got.
I mean, you're not far off of
at least
the All
5.
Stars.
What's that?
I said you're not far off of the All Stars. I mean, they've got what 25, 26, maybe 28. I think I remember, but
Take Speed Week out of their arsenal, and yeah, we're pretty much even. I think it's just whoever got Speed Week out has a time race advantage packed in.
yeah.
But the tracks that have stayed with us, I think we just need to perform this year, do what we do. And I mean, that I really feel like the pressure isn't on me this year. Last year, I felt a ton of pressure going to Speed Week. Everybody expected big things. The All Stars were gone and took those top drivers with them to high limit. I get thrown it on short notice with no financial help, no sponsorship help, and expected to somehow do as much or more than what the All Stars had done all those years. So I had a lot of pressure on me last year. This year, I feel like the ball's in their court. You all going to put it on bigger, better, show me how it's done. Show me how it's done.
And fortunately, I wish it wasn't that way. Like, can we just coexist and we can all be friends here? But sometimes it just doesn't work that way.
I feel like the pressure's off of me a little bit now. We're going to do what we did from 2018 through 2023, and 2024 was an anomaly. We got to run Speed Week for a year while the All Stars were gone, and it's a new slate, and wipe the slate clean, and let's see what happens.
Exactly. So
to clear the air, yeah, there's no. I want to say one last thing about the antique race car thing. Whatever people think, Rich Farmer and I don't get along. We hate each other. Whatever. Rich and I actually were very good friends. My first antique race car that we got running, that I got to make laps with, he got it running for me. He took it to his Napa store. I wish I could remember the fellow's name, Jason Sears, that worked for him. Worked on that little midget for me, a little flathead Ford car. Hadn't ran since the 1950s when it got parked, and they got that thing running for me. I proceeded to take it out on a very rough Fremont Speedway after the races are over with nothing but a handbrake, no seatbelt.
Oh man!
Looking back, I was going way too fast for spindles that could have broke. I mean, I could have probably killed myself.
Oh yeah.
To have that thing running, you're as exposed as a guy riding a horse, right? 1930 midgets like that. But it was a lot of fun. But I still appreciate Rich's effort in that department. I appreciate his love for the sport and dedication. I hope he appreciates my love and dedication for it too. And you might even see me at some all-star races this summer. I mean, there's nights where we're off and they're racing, and vice versa. So,
hey, why not? Why not help each other grow?
Exactly.
It's all about camaraderie. That's what I've always loved about dirt track racing. So I'd like to see it continue.
With both of us doing this, there's more opportunities for teams to race for a good purse. They're
exactly
both going to be running against one another, maybe 3 hours apart. But a driver who lives in the middle of that area, he can look both ways and say, "Where's my best chance to make the most money tonight?" Really good, healthy competition is good for everybody.
That's the thing I miss the most about things. Like, concession stands and everything else at the tracks. You know, this person can only sell this person can only sell that, you know, and like it's getting ridiculous. But you know, but Aaron, anybody you'd like to thank before we let you go, or any sponsors you'd like to give a shout out to?
You know, we've had a ton of fans get behind us here. There's my 10% warning on my battery. Apparently, doing live shows really eats its own battery because it doesn't usually die this quick. But
I've had mine plugged in to make sure it didn't happen.
next time, that's what I'll do. So many fans have messaged me privately, or a lot of cases posted right on our posts. There's always those people that are going to try to attack us. I mean, you know, I could be the best guy in the world. I'm not, but I could be the best guy in the world and do everything perfect. And there's just enough people out there that, you know, want to demean or whatever, or they're out, you know, they're for the other side, so they want to try to hurt us. But so many people rushed our defense and have so many nice things to say. I really appreciate the people that have come forward and telling us they support us. And I'm not saying to, you know, not support the other side or not support track. Support everybody. Support all dirt track racing. It's important for our sport to stay healthy in the long run overall. So don't pick a side. But I appreciate those of you that have come to my defense and said nice things. Our sponsors, yes, we have some fantastic sponsors that help us out. Obviously, Honest Abe Roofing coming on board, TI-22 and MPD, that's the title sponsors of the Fast and Boss, you know, the past few years. Still going to be on as presenting sponsors, but Victory Fuel, Tub of Towels, All Pro Cylinder Heads, been a major contributor. Jeff from All Mobility, I don't know if you know All Mobility, it's in Dayton, Ohio. They help disabled veterans getting wheelchair access and wheelchair ramps in, things like that. He
Have
was
to look into that.
sponsor this year. Jeff and his wife have been fantastic. If you're listening, thank you very much. Appreciate your help. We're looking for some new marketing partners. We do have a few openings this year, both Boss and Fast. So anybody looking to get involved, our heat race sponsorships, all the money goes directly to the race teams on race night. We definitely have at least one opening with Fast and two with Boss for 2025. So we'd love to have you on board, get you one of the heat race winner boards, and on our Victory Lane board. So
We need to get a Switching Grooves official podcast to Fast.
there you go. We'll talk. We'll talk. I've enjoyed this.
This has been fun. I appreciate it. And like you said, you know, I support both sides. I support Rich. I support you. I support High Limit. I support the World of Outlaws. I love it all, and I appreciate what you guys all do for the sport. And I don't think I'm gonna ever sit here and bash one or the other, you know. And I did reach out to Rich as the All-Star promoter to do an interview. Unfortunately, he declined, and I got a hold of you as well. You accepted, and I do appreciate that time that you've given us, Aaron. I mean, it's been 2 hours. I only expected to go at most an hour, but you know, I appreciate
I'm loving
it.
this. This is awesome. I feel like I'm a little kid, just absolutely loving these stories.
We may have to do a tour sometime. I could almost take a tour, but to give you, I mean, it's a complete mess, and some of the stuff over here on this shelf is pretty comical. But that's just one bookshelf that goes all the way to the floor there, full of binders of like National Speed Sport News stuff. That's one room. There's a whole other bookcase that big down in my game room full of stuff.
That's crazy.
The signs I've got from old racetracks. I've got a pretty good historical collection here. Old race helmets from drivers. Some of them were the guys that ran the cars that I have now. Gene Comstock's helmet and goggles that say property of the United States Air Force because they were World War II surplus, the goggles they ran.
That's crazy.
Other than that, the only place I've ever seen that kind of stuff is, you know, Fremont's Hall of Fame over there. But
I could almost put together a little Hall of Fame like Fremont's. I've got 7 antique race cars now. Guess counting my 1989 Gambler as an antique race car, it's definitely worth something because Phil Poor tried to buy it off of me to make a Steve Butler replica car. The people that did the Brad Doty Coors Light car wanted to buy it. The 89 Gambler was a pretty iconic race car. The one I have was the first one that Shirley Keir sold out of Keir Speed Shop back in the day.
man.
I think it was Tim Ton, I think was the driver's name, the number 191 car. And when I got the car, it still had number 91 on it. So that counting that one, if we count a 1989 car, I've got 7 antique race cars. So
Wow.
we'll try to put together a little museum someday. But right now, I want to get this book done. And if it wasn't for so much stress around scheduling and banquets and stuff like that this year, I think we'd have been ready to go to print this summer. It may be the summer of 26 before we get in print now with it. It's a huge undertaking. We're still finding new information almost daily, and I'm about to lose my phone.
I definitely want one of those books when it comes out, though. That's for sure.
I'd like to have one also.
Oh, it looks
His
like
phone may have just died.
it looks like Aaron died, but that was cool. Oh, here he comes. I have to add him back to the scene here. There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. It happens. I thought your phone died.
It's getting close. Yeah, we probably ought to cut this. We're right at 2 hours anyway. If anybody's still listening, thank you for the patience to stay in here and hang in here with me. This isn't as long as the Chaz, though. The Chaz kept me for like 3 hours. I was trying to get off there with him, and he just kept going.
I lasted this long because this is insane. I mean, I talk a lot, and I've run out of things to talk about. I'm loving this.
Hey, the Chaz. I loved Chaz's analogy that he did about the girl in bed. Yeah, that was just hilarious. He had me rolling.
My daughter was texting me things to keep me focused because she could tell I was zoning out on him. I was kind of losing it, so she would keep me up to date. But I'll get me back on the show sometime. Tell you what I'll do. I'll even pull up some of the racetracks from your area up there. Some of those I found racetracks. Well, I can't say we. Kyle Jones does a tremendous job with this with me. If you guys listen to this, it's OVDTR, Ohio Valley Dirt Track Racing, OVDTR.com. Say hi to Kyle Jones and tell him you appreciate his work. We have uncovered probably 20 or 30 racetracks that probably would have been lost to time, maybe would have never been found again if we hadn't dug these up. A murder actually kept one racetrack in the news. The track ran 2 races, and if it hadn't been for the mayor of the town shooting and killing one of the drivers, we would have never found this racetrack. So there's some neat stories out there. Yeah, we've got a couple of weird, crazy stories that happened that, like I said, helped us find some of these racetracks that would have been lost to time. But I'll dig up a few in your area and be able to tell you guys some good stories. So we've got we've got one in your area that is a mystery even to us still. Maybe we can get your listeners to help us out with it. So we'll do that for another day, though.
All right.
Yeah, we'll definitely set up another day and another show to do some just talk about the history. So that's awesome. But Aaron, thanks again, man. I appreciate your time, especially 2 hours of it, man. I wasn't expecting it to go on at the most an hour, but it did.
I am a MAC football fan, college football, and Bowling Green. I don't know what time they kicked off, but it's probably at least halftime by now. The Bowling Green game. I would like to go watch them. Toledo pulled off a big win. They beat Pitt today in 6 overtimes. So crazy ball game there. My Ohio University Bobcats won their MAC championship and their bowl game. The MAC's having some good success right now, so I'm going to go catch you into the Bowling Green game.
All right, Aaron. Thanks for joining us, buddy, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks again for having us. Thank you. See you.
So that was Aaron Fry, owner of Boss and Fast Series, Sprint Car Series, joining us for an interview. And I think that's going to do it for the night for us, Nathan. So what do you think, man?
That was probably the most fun I've had on an episode. We didn't even talk about NASCAR, and I absolutely was dialed in. I love this. That was so much fun for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Aaron's a really, really great guy, man. I've met him a couple of times. I don't think he remembers me, but I've met him a few times at the tracks, man. And he'll just sit there and talk with you all day, man. And he's a really awesome guy. And I appreciate him giving us the time that he did, especially, like I said, 2 hours of it. I wasn't expecting that. I was actually going to try to keep the interview just to a half an hour since we've already done our regular show. So,
yeah, that was my fault.
No, you're fine, man. It's good, man. It went in a direction that it wasn't supposed to go, and it made it interesting. It didn't go in a bad direction. That's what I liked about it.
Well, I know
So,
that we need to shut it down for the night because we've now
Yep.
broken our personal record of 2 hours. So with Switching Grooves, I'm Nathan Johns.
and I'm Russ Fritz, guys, saying race hard,
Stay safe.
and we'll see you there. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.